first off, Genesis mission. For those of you who have not been paying attention, we already have been seeing headlines from the White House on funding different AI projects, data centers. If you don't remember, there was the big announcement with OpenAI previously. So this is just a continuation of a thing that we're already seeing, but specifically, there's a lot of callbacks to. I know Matt. I'm gonna flip us all the way back to our first slide here. A lot of callbacks to the moon mission, right? So that
Mm.
I highly recommend people to take a look at the Genesis mission's website. You'll see a lot of it's a very slick web design, a lot of video that really again calls back to the moon landings, things like that. There's really a period where America was kind of front and center in the world's mind. So um, what does the Genesis mission do? Ultimately, it's really just the government opening up their claim is that it's going to open up all of the internal U.S. government documentation, research, etc., to then train AI models. And they very clearly outline this on the website here. How is the Genesis mission different from private sector AI? Unlike commercial models trained on the open internet, Genesis mission will draw from the government's secure, blah, 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 scientific data, right? So this is definitely a very big difference from what we've seen previously. If you think about how current models are trained, OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini as well, there is some level of private data that they're able to, or I should say proprietary data that they're able to train on. If you think about Google, they have all of that search engine information, right? Who searches for what, how it relates to search rankings. That's all information that sites like Anthropic, sites like OpenAI are unable to directly utilize. That's all open information, right? For the most part, it's publicly accessible. You could even try to, and people have tried to utilize Google search to then see what the rankings will look like to then try to train their own model to approximate something like that. But this again is very different. This is saying there is a trove of government data that has not been publicly accessible
Mm.
that will be then opened to these frontier labs. Um, on the right here, I wanted to kind of it might be a little bit tough to read here. They haven't gone through the entire collaborator list to be clear, but what is available on the website, you're going to see some very common names: AMD, AWS, Anthropic. You've got Applied Materials. We talked about Cerebras chips on a previous episode, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, anybody and everybody already related to the data center trade, if they're somehow U.S. based, have relations to the U.S. government already, MP Materials is on the list. They are part of this project.
So
Now,
I think
yeah,
something interesting here. This isn't just AI development companies, right? This goes beyond, what we've seen in the public sector headlines. OpenAI does deals with AMD, et cetera,
yep,
that we saw taking place over 2025. You've got the metals deals in here too. Remember when we saw the Department of Defense with MP Materials in June? This list is like you've got Albemarle, right? They're a lithium producer.
yep.
Um, you just go down here. Critical materials, recycling,
Thyroid magnetics.
applied materials.
Yep.
Yeah, MP materials on this list. PMT, critical metals. This really kind of brings together holistically like what we've been focusing on covering in our weekly, topics. The metals element to this trade. I think what may be going on, the old world paradigm, the Keynesian approach, where hey, we just did public debt funding for any project, right? It's GDP enhancing, just do it. That's the model. It'll work. I think we're seeing what we're seeing take shape and play out here is a much more focused, public policy towards specific objectives, and it's really on this AI thing. But you're also getting, and part of that is you're getting the metals and resources, domestic security that you're seeing pop up, in discussion, not being reliant on a foreign party like China to own those critical supply chains. But I think in the bigger picture, what may be going on, if you just think about that old school Keynesian model, it's just like, yeah, just increase increase GDP, rinse, repeat. That's how you keep your economic growth humming along. We've kind of seen that model naturally play itself out, right? But I think what we're seeing the early stages, it's beyond the early stages. Like we're well on our way into that trend, in my opinion, is a focused national economic policy taking shape. And I think that like the term I'm seeing show up more and more is a focus on, in terms of the input, what matters to economic growth. It's not just the basics like throw capital at the problem, physical capital, throw labor, credit creation. Things happen. Productivity is the byproduct that you get as exhaust. And gradually, then suddenly, or whatever, that process works its way through over decades and centuries and leads to better outcomes. I think you're seeing a shift in thinking in policy in Washington, D.C. towards um, directing towards a specific goal. And that's what this AI situation, I think that's the kind of technology that we've latched onto. It's captured the attention of everybody as the way out of this monetary, problem and debt situation that we found ourselves in after 70 years, and that system reaching its end of life. But I think there's a new focus here on what's emerging. The term I'm seeing come up. I'll get to this. I'm kind of delayed the delayed the payload here, but energy density flux, right? And what does that mean? It's your economy's ability to produce energy, but not just broad broad spread everywhere. It's density. It's in specific places to meet specific goals, and then flux is the movement of that energy through time. I think that's really what we're getting with here. So all the key trends we've talked about, in addition to the geopolitics and the money on our weekly roundups every week, there's also that energy element driving at the core. And in the decades, centuries ahead, what it all boils down to is more energy density flux in the domestic U.S. economy, and that ultimately leads to productivity and higher quality of life for the average American household. We just had to cross this valley of death, if you will, that we're going through here, or that we've actually been going through for decades now. But yeah, I think it's fascinating what we saw, and maybe there is just this is just public marketing. We put a big um, just label on it
Asterisk,
to
yeah.
get the public excited. You call it Genesis project, same way with the Apollo programs. Let's get the space exploration going, all of that. So there's probably some of that in terms of just get the public rallying and behind something. Let's see if this captures the American imagination and gets people bought in, kind of like the excitement over the space program. That one's TBD, but there's definitely something very interesting already taking shape, and we're well underway on this process
And I did
here.
just want to add one interesting parallel just to bring up again from a prior episode. We did talk about China's AI development program. I had this in here, but this was actually from 2017. I highly recommend people taking a look at it. You don't need to read through the whole thing, it's extremely long. But effectively, in 2017, China put together their Genesis mission, right? All of these kind of things that we've been talking about here in the US, China has also been doing. Um, 2017 is when they timestamped this. The US has some documents similarly around 2017. So I don't want to make it try to seem like China is ahead of us per se on anything, but when we talk about kind of Matt, you're talking through directing investment towards very specific end goals. You're seeing it very clearly on the U.S. side with the Genesis mission. China has done that as well with they called it the new generation artificial intelligence development plan. So again, we're seeing kind of a similarity here in terms of how China is trying to direct their resources towards a specific end goal, AI in this case as well.